You're seeing it from the world. This calls for ceasefire, this call to end the conflict, but very clear language from Prime Minister Netanyahu, who said that this is Israel's second war of independence, and it will be long and it will be tough. This is not going to be a short incursion into the Gaza Strip. And even as you're seeing in the news, Israel going a step closer into Gaza City, it's small steps. It's not mass. It's not a shock and awe ground invasion that we have seen at this point. In fact, they have not even used the word, the Israelis have not used the word invasion when they've been talking about it at this point.
Now, Macron said something very interesting yesterday, and he said, and I thought this was fascinating, he said, maybe we need an international military coalition to go in and take out Hamas like they did ISIS. And I thought that was very, very interesting.
Biden says we have their back. It's how long? I mean, that's what Israel's got to be concerned about, and why. Listen, an international coalition to say Hamas is ISIS, and we all need to destroy this group, is an interesting play. It's whether or not it would ever come together, because it would have to kind of base in Israel.
The shock, I think, has to be Hillary Clinton's statement about the ceasefire and Hamas. Take a listen.
People who are calling for a ceasefire now do not understand Hamas. That is not possible. It would be such a gift to Hamas, because they would spend whatever time there was a ceasefire in effect rebuilding their armaments, creating stronger positions to be able to fend off an eventual assault by the Israelis.
I wish Joe Biden would say that. I mean, if you give me a choice right now, you have to have a Democratic candidate. It's going to be Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden. Give me Hillary Clinton, because she gets it. I mean, but the White House isn't making these statements. That's the problem. I think the White House is the opposite. They're putting pressure on for a ceasefire.
The administration has not gone to the step of saying there needs to be a ceasefire today. We haven't seen.
Right.
They have basically agreed with the statement that a ceasefire would just benefit Hamas. That being said, they're the last remaining country basically in the world, other than Israel, at the UN, and the pressure's high on the U.S. because it's not just that there are some Americans being held hostage, but there's people from 27 or 28 other countries being held hostage. And those countries are saying, well, they at least need a ceasefire so that we can get our citizens out, and then, they could go back to conflict. The problem is to get there, what Hamas wants 6,000 terrorists released?
5,700, right.
This is so that they will release 200 or something innocent people.
The war within the Gaza Strip will be harsh and long, but we are ready. This is our second war of liberation. We are going to fight to protect the country. We're going to fight. We will not retreat by land, by sea, by air. We shall eliminate the enemy on top of the land and the bottom, and we shall prevail. It'll be the good over evil, light over darkness, life over death. In this war, we are standing together.
I mean, you realize that kind of rhetoric is not similar to the previous, I'd say, 4 or 5 conflicts that Israel's engaged in, which were difficult, but already would have been over with at this point.
These decisions are very difficult to make, and I hate to be Prime Minister Netanyahu having to be in the driver's seat to make these terrible choices on what is good and what is bad for Israel. But he has made it very clear that he is going to protect his country and he's going to fight, and there's not going to be any retreat. And I think that's the only way that he can do at this point. Israel was attacked on October 7th. Israel did nothing to provoke that attack. And just like Pearl Harbor, and I think he said that, just like 9/11 in New York in 2001. These are unprovoked, premeditated, I should say, attacks, and Israel's got to do it for what? It's survival. Literally.
So the UN agency in Gaza, of course, is urging a ceasefire, as does a lot of the country right now. They're saying it's a matter of life and death for millions of Palestinians, but it's also a matter of life and death for the nation state of Israel. And let me tell you one thing that's going on right now, and that is we're going to be meeting next week in our offices in Washington with some of the hostage families representatives, these mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers of hostages. And we have our legal team at the ACLJ, in conjunction with our multiple officers were involved in this, have come up with a method upon which we can go to the UN, at least put the UN in a vice here, so that they understand this is not a one-way street.
What people have seen is that Russia invaded Ukraine because of a weak Biden administration, a weak America. At least that's how they picture it.
Yep.
And then, they funded Ukraine, and it's been tougher for Russia than they thought it would be. But still, they're still going on with it. It's still ongoing. It's not getting as much attention right now. And Hamas decided this was the time, and that means Iran decided this was the time to launch the largest scale invasion into Israel and to carry out these atrocious attacks against Israelis, to cut their heads off, to kill children, to take hostages. We've gone through it over and over. I don't want to keep saying it in case you're in the car with kids. But they okayed that under the Biden administration because they really don't fear them.
I partly blame the Biden administration. They dropped the sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, showing weakness. The Biden administration policy was weak. And then we had the war in Ukraine. The Biden administration policy on Iran, giving them $6 billion plus in credits or money. And then we had the October 7th attacks on Israel. I think that when you have weak policies and you make moves with weakness, you message to our enemies and to others that they can make a move on us.
I don't know if people are picking this up, but as Israel's making its incursions into Gaza, let me tell you what they're planting: the Israeli flag. And I think the symbolism in that culture, in that community, in the Semitic world is very significant. And the flag, Andy, being planted, whether they continue to govern or not, is very symbolic.
And I think the fact that they planted the flag is making a statement with respect to reclaiming this territory that rightfully belongs to them. Because in not only in Israel and in the world, but in the world generally, symbolism has a great deal to do with how you conduct diplomacy and foreign policy, and in this case, how you conduct war. When they go in there and they put a flag in the land, that is saying this is now Israeli territory, Jay.
The Israeli intelligence knows where the rockets are being flown out of. They have on-ground intelligence showing where a lot of these facilities, a lot of the Hamas command centers are underneath hospitals. So the Israelis know that, and that's why this is a little bit more painstaking and slower than people anticipated. This is because of exactly what you said. They don't wear uniforms. You don't have a marked enemy, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, they do have some special forces, Hamas, that would be more easily identifiable. That's probably who Israel is battling with right now. I mean, we're hearing that Israel is battling with Hamas in tunnels as we speak. 2 IDF soldiers were killed today in battles in Gaza. That's early on. I mean, this is just barely reaching over the border into Gaza. So I think that what we are going to learn is that the Hamas of 2023, as they get further into Gaza, is a much more lethal Hamas than the Hamas that we would be near those rockets and really not concerned for our life.
No,
I
think that's 100%.
We'd be there. The rockets be coming in. I wasn't worried about dying.
No, exactly.
And
right.
neither were most Israelis.
No.
You get to the bomb shelter, you'll be safe.
Yep.
It wasn't pleasant, but a pleasant way to live, but you weren't going to die, and you weren't worried about them coming over the border and cutting your head off.